Howdy everybody, it's Ben. I'm back with my second round of the Denver Open. Um, this game was categorized by some broken opening principles, um, unclear plans in the middle game, and a really cool tactic at the end. So let's check it out. So I played the Sicilian as always. I usually do the exact same setup every time against the closed. Um, Put my knight on c6, this, e6, knight ge2, and then maybe looking for d5. But so my opponent already kind of deviates from the normal plan. Usually if you're going to put your bishop on b5, you should be taking the knight on c6 and doubling my structure. In which case I'd maybe go for like d5 in some lines. Oh no, Misa's back. But nonetheless, he moves his bishop twice in the opening, which is very good for me because I'm gaining free tempo. Isn't it? Alright. 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 I didn't learn my lesson. But he goes queen f3 out of nowhere. I really don't know why he played this move. He said it was something to do with his prep, but at this point I just have knight e5, and this is a very nice move. I'm winning the bishop pair. Very forced sequence here. And now I just have a great structure, the bishop pair, and probably nothing to worry about. Although converting this was definitely very hard, even though I had a great advantage from the start. I wasn't exactly sure how to make optimal progress. So I ended up playing d6, f4, kind of in like his Grand Prix style. Knight f6, knight f3, castles, castles. And as you can see by all these circles, you know, black should definitely be at least equal to better here with some really nice bishops and a decent pawn structure in the center. I go a6, and he kind of makes a mistake here. I would definitely have to call this a mistake because I get a free b5 in with tempo. You can't take because of this nice little tactic I calculated. AB, and now the queen's hit, and there's an undefended rook on a1. So I'm winning a rook in this line. So obviously he doesn't go for that. He just sadly brings his queen back, and then I can play b4. And then he sadly brings his knight back. And just look at this. I have connect 4 on the dark squares, and it's just visually really good, but here I struggled to find a great plan. I put my bishop on b7, which seems pretty natural, pointing towards his king, and just being on the nice long diagonal, threatening to win e4. I called this a bow and arrow. Kind of looks like a bow and arrow, right? The bishop as the arrowhead. So he defends e4. I play queen c7, which might be my first slow / inaccurate move of the game. So far I've just been developing naturally. But here I just kind of go queen c7 out of like, hey, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'm gonna play maybe I'm looking for c4 and like stack my rooks up on the c file, which is what I ended up going for and getting. But it definitely didn't feel like a super great plan. Yeah, I just wasn't sure how to take down his decent central space here. He slides his rook out of the way of my bishop's scope, which is probably a good idea. He couldn't play moves like b3 because I think I just had knight e4. And he's losing material at least. So he kind of gets out of the way of that, but then I give my c4 plan. He rightly keeps the tension, plays b3, justifies his rook move. And I take here, which is okay. I'm not sure. I'm definitely going to look at it with the engine after this. I forgot to do that last video. But c3 looks tempting, but I thought he could just play around it. You know, go knight e3 and end up getting his knight on c4 nicely. So, tough decision to make. Maybe there's probably even justification for taking on b3, not allowing my opponent to get that central space, although he already has a nice central punching, so I'm not sure. Nonetheless, I take this way, he takes, and I put my rook on the c file as planned. But like, you know, it's not really like a super good plan, because my queen can't really infiltrate in any decent way. He's gonna play knight e3 and guard c2, and now his knights are just pretty decent on f3 and e3, and I don't actually have a plan here. My fianchetto bishops are pretty passive at the moment. He gets out of the pin. I think, hey, maybe I'll reroute my knight. I always saw this knight c4 idea, which looked really annoying. Like just plugging up the hole on c4 and hitting my queen with tempo. So I had to kind of be careful and play around that idea. Bishop b2, and like, I feel like he's definitely equalized here. I'm like, where did I go wrong, right? I'm excited to see what the engine says, but I definitely played too dovish and passive, and he was able to definitely pacify my position, you know. You couldn't call this anything greater than equal for either side, in my opinion. The bishop pair is okay, but like, what am I to do to maintain this bishop pair? Bishop h5 and give him the strong diagonal, or bishop f8 and just cry? I don't know. But so I try and just improve, let him capture me on my terms. I take, and then I bring my knight back to f6, and so I've ended up wasting a bunch of tempo in this middle game because I didn't have a good plan, which is very interesting. I figured after f5 I was pretty scared, and I was like, man, I probably do need a defender over here, at least. You know, I have my plans on the queen side, but it looks like he's going to be pretty fast to like rip open my position and attack me with these knights. And so he goes g4 here, which is definitely a scary move for both of us. He's improving my bishop's scope, which I end up taking advantage of. I assume he's going to go for g5 here, and I cook up probably like the best tactical combination that I've ever played. So I start the combination with rook c3. You know, not a pretty modest move. You know, maybe x-ray visioning that knight on e3, preparing to maybe play rook c8 and double up and get some nice rooks on the c file. So in a way it kind of encourages him to play g5, because if he lets me get my rooks doubled, then it's probably not going to be too good for him. And he has this kingside attack brewing, so why wouldn't he go for it? But I calculated an awesome sequence here that I think was correct. I did computer check this a little bit, just the tactic to see if it was good, but not much of the middle game stuff. So g5, and then pause the video if you like. The answer is over there if you want to see, but I uncorked a nasty knight sacrifice. Knight takes e4 here. Obviously, if he just takes back right away, then he'll be losing a pawn after rook takes e3, hitting his queen and this undefended pawn here. So he wouldn't take back immediately, which I saw, of course. He has this nice move, which I talked about earlier, knight c4. Cutting off my rook, you know, just kind of stopping things on the c-file while also hitting my queen. And this looks like it just completely refutes my idea, because my queen's hit, and now his knight's defended on c4, and now my knight is hanging on e4. But I saw this in my calculations, and I thought I could play the nasty rook takes c4, exchange sacrifice. I thought here maybe he had f6 check, not immediately taking back, but I think I could just go takes, and if takes, takes? I'm not sure. I got scared of this in game, but thankfully he just goes d takes c4. And after d takes c4, I have an awesome move, which I saw. I saw this all. Boom, knight takes g5. And we're going to be winning back the exchange. His g4 idea proved to be fatal for him because my bow and arrow that I created at the start of the game was able to take its shot, right? So now I've pinned this knight on f3, and it's only defended by heavy pieces. It's attacked by 2 minor pieces and only defended by heavy pieces. So whenever I so choose to take his knight, he has to pretty much recapture with a rook. So I'll be getting back my exchange, but I've netted a ton of pawns in the process, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've netted oh, that was an accident. So I've netted 2 pawns out of this interaction and done it in the coolest sacrificial exchange, knight sacrifice way possible. So I was super happy to see this. He plays h4, which I don't believe could be a good move. I just take once on f3, and now this pawn is very weak, and his king's even more open. So I play a super classy move, queen d4. You know, there's no need to take this rook right away. That would just help him get closer to equalizing again. I want to keep this as long as possible, so I can play moves like queen d4 here, eyeing up the pawn on h4 for free, essentially. His queen is stuck to the defense of this rook, because if the queen were to leave the defense of the rook, I would just take his rook for free with check. He needs his queen here to be able to recapture, of course. Okay, so I play queen d4. He further supports his rook, so now maybe his queen can move and take on e7. But by now it's just too late. My queen's in and his king's open, and my king is fairly safe, and we can clean it up from here for sure. Check. Check. I was hoping he would play here, in which case I have the nice simplifying idea of just queen takes f3, queen takes f3, bishop takes f3, king takes f3. And this many pawns is decisive for sure. So he can't afford to simplify into any endgame here besides a heavy piece endgame like we're currently in. Okay. And for that reason he goes king h2, breaking the pin. He is threatening to save his rook now, so I do have to cash out that rook. But by now it's just too late. I have all the pawns, and my king safety is far superior to his king safety. So I play the calm rook c8. We're just going to play rook c5 and get our final piece in the game and just tear up this open king. He unpins his queen. I go rook c5. He attacks my queen. I take another pawn. He's getting desperate, probably a little tilted. Super great guy, by the way. I talked to him a lot during the tournament. Funny story, actually. I thought he was 1800. I misread the pairing sheets, and I thought he was 1800. So maybe around that middle game where I didn't have a plan, I was pretty tempted to take a draw, thinking he was an 1800. But he's actually lower rated than me in 1500. So funny little information mix-up there. Could have decided the game and made it a whole different game. He pins my rook. I block the pin. And now I can just win his rook for free. Rook g5. Oh, damn it. Darn it. Rook g5, king f1, queen g2. And we're picking up the rook, and finally he resigns. He played on, of course. Well, he said he would have resigned earlier, but I always respect an opponent who plays on, just in case. But yeah, this is definitely decisive at this point, picking up a final rook. Okay, let's quickly take a look at some of the computer suggestions in that middle game. Okay. Yeah, let's just take a look from the start. So yeah, queen f3 is not the end of the world. Knight e5 is not even necessary. e6 is better. Probably trying to play, get our other knight in the game. Or knight f6. This makes a lot of sense. I did not need to net the bishop pair here necessarily, although it just seemed aesthetically pleasing to have it, but it never ended up doing anything anyway, so e6 makes a lot of sense. Let's say he goes d3. And yeah, the biggest idea is probably keeping our knight to go on d5 here, or d4, and also wanting to play knight e2. Like the setup I explained at the start, which I usually try to get. Okay. There's that bishop pair. Looks like b6 was a little better. You know, we did end up putting our bishop on the long diagonal. So I'm not too surprised it just wants b6 here with intentions of probably putting it on the long diagonal to start. Because that is where the bishops seem to be happiest. Castles. Way too many arrows and boxes. My apologies. Whatever. We'll just get that position. Queen e2, and yeah, a4 is not possible. We just get a free b5 in. Computer says we don't even need to take it, but I took it. And yeah, free b5, b4, and now his knight has to go to d1. I thought maybe he could bring his knight to d5, but I guess the computer hates that. I thought we would just maybe play off that pawn, which we do end up doing. So c4 en passant here, and yeah, we just pick up a pawn. So he was correct in playing knight d1. Okay, a5. Yeah, a5 is a move I needed to do earlier. I ended up playing it, but you know, I have a lot of time to improve my position, and I think I was a little too hasty with queen c7 and c4 so fast. Why not just restrict my opponent's options and improve my structure even more? This also gives my bishop the square a6 in a lot of lines. My bishop going to a6 was something I was calculating a bunch, actually. And so it makes a lot of sense to see a5 here with bishop a6 intentions, possibly. Okay, c4 was correct. I'm very happy about that. Because I definitely did not know what I was doing. And it does want c3. Just putting the bind in on my opponent. And it makes a lot of sense. I've been doing all this pawn play over here on the queen side, like, you know, it's always good to get that space. Wow. And the computer wants rook a e8, and we're maybe going to challenge him over here on the king side. Very interesting decision. Let's say knight c4 here. d5 takes. Knight takes. Yeah, and yeah, this is just like positionally very strong. We have like this great queenside space. He can hardly develop or play with his dark squared bishop, whereas ours is a little better, holding on to that long diagonal and also holding on to help supporting these nice pawns. And we're just going to be up a pawn in this line. Computer wants f6, which is insane, but interesting. I like e5 here. And this is just visually really good for black. Space, well-placed pieces, a nicely powerful unopposed light squared bishop. Yeah, c3 makes a lot of sense. But we took, and there goes our advantage, right? Well, I called it perfectly almost. It was around this point where I realized, oh man, like, I don't actually have anything. So c3 makes a lot of sense. I just kind of pacified the position. I should have taken his bishop, but I didn't. Anything better? Yeah, a5. Is that what I played? Perfect. Yeah, a5 is okay here. That was second best, so I'll take that. The bishops get traded. Thankfully, his knight did not come into c4. I saw that this was possible for him, but he held off on it. Rook c3 here makes a lot of sense. We're just threatening bishop takes e4 in this position, which seems very strong. He's got to kick us out at the cost of bringing his knight back to d1. Let's not play rook c3 again. Don't want to repeat. And then knight of 6. Okay, so knight of 6 was okay. I definitely wasted a tempo bringing it to d7. Alright. Ooh, and there we go. g5, and the computer hates it. My bishop is very strong now. Ooh, wow. Top move is not knight c3 like I played, but actually queen a6, which is threatening once again. Bishop takes e4. Nearly forces knight c4 from what I'm seeing. And then we have this very nice d5 break. And we're getting after his structure. Taking advantage of the knight on c4 and forcing him to ruin his structure. Wow. Oh, and if knight c4, it does hang g4. So queen a6 is quite nice here, actually. Let's pretend he doesn't hang g4, but then just e4 hangs. Ooh. And wow, look at this pressure piling up. This is how you were supposed to use the c-file and your bishop. Play a5, guys. Look at that. a5 and put something on a6 to just pin to win here. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay. Oh, wait. Sorry. I forgot. And this is correct. Yep. So he did not play the best defense, thankfully. But at the same time, the best defense is essentially just giving me the pawn. So I think he gave it the best human try for sure. And yeah, we just have knight c5 here, up a pawn. What happens if white gets greedy? Oh man, you gotta have balls of steel for this stuff. Knight takes d3, and like we're allowing f6 check or queen f6, which are both extremely scary moves, personally. Oh my gosh, yeah. No, the computer is playing this way too sharp. It's -4, but like, white has some scary ideas, to say the least. I would be shitting my pants here. Okay. But thankfully he doesn't play the pawn sacrifice and just takes, ooh, let's check out f6 real fast. So f6, I just had takes, and bring my knight back, yeah. With like a perfectly fine position. My king's a little open, but this bishop is still pinned, that's the problem. And our rook slides in with tempo, and we're getting a ton of activity, even though we're down the exchange. We have 2 pawns and like insanely active pieces, in addition to a pass pawn, actually. So yeah, this position is definitely still winning, but I'm happy he didn't go for this, because I think the line which we went through was very clearly a win for black. H4 is also incorrect, of course. Takes, yep, then queen d4 is a nice, awesome move. You could take on f3, but queen d4 is much more precise and pretty to look at. Takes, and yeah, we're just terrorizing him at this point. Okay. Well, that probably about does it. You know, I think most people would be able to convert this, so not much else to gain from it. But nice, yeah, that was probably one of my favorite games ever. Mostly just because of that tactic at near the end. But yeah, we'll end it at that. Awkward ending. I'm out.